Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily Eye Show. Today is 12/4/2025. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for people joining in the chat as well. Today, I'm joined by Andy and I'm Brian. We'll see if anybody else pops in the door here in a little bit. But Andy, as always, we like to kind of kick off with some of the news and then get into the deeper discussions. And oh, I have way too many tabs open, but I had two different things that I wanted to kind of bring up. We've been talking a lot lately about the red teaming and, or not red teaming, rather the red alert that may or may not been what, code red, yeah, which may or may not been what Sam Altman, maybe that wasn't the wording he should have used on that instead of, put focus here or something like that. So, there were some pretty funny videos and reaction videos to that. But what I actually wanted to bring up was somebody we don't actually talk about, that I don't believe we talk about a lot, from Anthropic, and this is Jared Kaplan. He is one of the co-founders of Anthropic. And so a lot of times we talk about Mario because he puts out quite a bit of, he's on stages more often and stuff like that. But this is the chief scientist at AI. At Anthropic. And he, as Anthropic does, they talk about sort of the scary side of the future of AI. And there's this quote here. This is from The Guardian that I'm reading it in. It says, if you can imagine, you create this process where you have an AI that is smarter than you or about as smart as you, it's then making AI that's much smarter. And so this is sort of this Prometheus idea, right? This iterations. And he's saying that he feels like we're maybe 2-3 years out, maybe a little bit more than that, from us having to really decide. I don't know who's going to decide, like whether we want AI to learn from AI. And there's a couple of nice little quotes, little bullet points in here. And he says, some of the things that he said, AI systems will be capable of doing most white collar work in 2 to 3 years. That's in quotes, most white collar work. And I think there's a lot to probably dig into that one, Andy, with all your experience and stuff. And maybe. He also said that his 6-year-old son will never be better than an AI at academic work, such as writing an essay or doing a maths exam. And I thought that one was really striking, as you got grandchildren now, but you've also got your own kids. I talk a lot about Sophia, who's 15. And it is that sort of like, that interesting idea of, they're in a world now where there will always be an AI that can do the thing that they're really good at better than they are in most cases. I mean, I don't, that's not a across the board, right? He also said that it was right to worry about humans losing control of a technology if AI starts to improve itself, which we already just talked about. The stakes in the AI race to AGI feel, quote, daunting. This is from the chief scientist in Anthropic. The best case scenario could enable AI to accelerate biomedical research, improve health and cybersecurity, boost productivity, and give people more free time to help humans flourish. So I just found this to be an interesting article because it's not somebody that we talk about a lot. I don't know this gentleman. Again, his name is
Jared Kaplan.
Jerry Kaplan, yeah, the chief scientist and co-owner of the $180 billion US startup Anthropic, who also, side news is, I learned that they have hired the same firm that took Google public and another big company public. And so they are starting to ramp up for an IPO in 2026.
Yeah, we mentioned that yesterday. And
we did? Okay.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, I did in passing that Anthropic is preparing for an IPO. And Anthropic's really a special public benefit corporation. So even though they're going to be a major, splash in the public markets, it's a different kind. It's a public benefit corporation, which is slightly different from a pure, let's enrich Mark Zuckerberg kind of, meta, valuation. Anyway, I'm glad you brought up this point. I hadn't seen that. But I just started last night watching The Thinking Game, which is the documentary that's won the Tribeca Film Festival Award for official selection. It's the story of DeepMind. and how they created. They started out with the mission to create an artificial intelligence,
Mm.
and it started by having this process of trying to use reinforcement learning to have a system learn how to play a game effectively. They started out with
Mm.
Pong, and they
Yeah.
go all the way up to the moments where AlphaGo
Hmm.
beat the world champion Go player, and you see this, Chinese master after it had beaten the Korean master.
Hmm.
That guy kind of resigned and skulked away.
Yeah.
Uh, then they went after the number one player in the world, and they defeated him as well. It's basically the team of DeepMind behind a glass, operating their system
Hmm.
against a single human out there, the very best player in the world. And ultimately, you see all these images of the humans going like this. And this is to your point that artificial intelligences will far surpass any individual human's abilities in almost any domain you want to point an AI at with reinforcement learning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very wow, we're living through a transition here, and when you think about the contrast between that point that Jared Kaplan's making, watch the thinking game. I put the YouTube link in there
Oh,
in
good.
the private thing. So if you post that on the stream, then our watchers can watch this as well. It's free. You can just go to YouTube and watch it. Um, the thinking game. Uh, you know, Contrast that to the worries that people have about whether AI is a bubble and there's not going to be enough value out there. Well, on one hand, we're saying there's not enough value in enterprise or wherever else, and on the other hand, we're saying AI is rapidly on a track towards a time, maybe not next year, but within my lifetime, to being able to do anything that any human can do.
And it's really quick side note. You did share the link. It's called you said the thinking game. I would just recommend people going to look. Thank you, Andy, for sharing the link. We are moving on from this system on Monday, but we're still on our old legacy system that we're streaming from, and I don't have access to chat, unfortunately. This is more of a long-terming problem, but it sounds like the thinking game is an easy enough name, and it doesn't surprise me. It's free on YouTube, so you should be able to go get that. So yes, Greg was asking for the link.
There's actually a channel called The Thinking Game Film.
Oh, okay.
So you'll be able to search it on YouTube easily.
Yeah, makes sense, right? Google, YouTube. they made it really easy for us to find. I wanted to get back to your point about this idea that both Jared is bringing up, and you're talking about. You know what? Let's go through some more news, and let's come back to that as more of a topic, because I do have some thoughts on that about like, where does that go? It's not really conundrum, but it kind of goes in that area, but it'll be a good conversation. So let's pause on that because it's a longer conversation. I know I jumped in with this one from Anthropic. Do you have any news stories that you like that kind of hit your radar?
Let me weave off of Code Red. So, there's this rumor that there is this garlic model that, OpenAI is going to rush out with in order to overcome the lead that Gemini 3 has created for Google in the space. But Google has some really powerful advantages over OpenAI in many respects. And I want to talk about that. And specifically, though ChatGPT has 800 million weekly users, Gemini has 650 million monthly users. Now, that's not quite the same as ChatGPT, because it's not everybody among those 650 million is going directly to Gemini.google.com, I don't think. But Google has this ecosystem advantage, right? They've got all the spaces, search, they've got Gmail, they've got Drive, they've got all these places where you can intersect with their AI models. And so the problem for Google right at the moment, it seems to be that their integrations with their own workspaces aren't that good with Gemini. Gemini is great, But Gemini, to really take advantage of its best abilities, you have to go over to gemini.google.com or AI Studio
Right.
or, yeah. So anyway, but then I just saw, and this is the news item, I just saw that Google is putting out a new product, which is workspace.google.com. It's
Mhm.
only currently available to a small subset of enterprise and business users. So you have to have the sort of the company level subscription to Google Workspace. Um, I have an individual Workspace account because I'm no longer affiliated with a company.
Yeah.
So I can't get access to it. But workspace.google.com is a simple, sort of interactive language, conversation with Gemini to create a workflow like N8N. Okay, so
Mm.
we were talking just before the show started about the work that you do in N8N.
Yeah.
I'm envious because N8N I've played with. I've done a few things in N8N, but I've kind of discarded that because I don't have a lot of sort of business automation requirements in the work that I do. So
Right.
anyway, workspace.google.com is a newly announced feature that makes it dead simple for you to automate things in Gmail, in Drive. And, I think that's where you're going to see Google come to the fore is when they actually instrument productization of Gemini in their very massive ecosystem of workspace tools.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now because I wasn't as familiar with it, and I with Scaled, we are a Google Workspace company, and I'm at a stopping point here because it's like you'll need a domain or like example to set up an email and a Google Workspace account for your business. So I'll have to get into that and dive more into what that is.
Yeah.
But
So
I agree with you. I saw. Go
you
ahead.
can what just a tip. You've been using gems in your client work. Well,
Yeah.
you can use Workspace to tie together multiple gems, right? So you can have Gmail trigger and calls this gem and it does another thing and posts something to Drive, which triggers another thing. That I mean, it's going to be an interesting new workspace for you.
I think so. In fact, I have a client literally right now where we built the first three, we call them assistants, but they're custom GPTs. And in as I was wrapping up this phase of the development, he was like, "Oh, he said, it was very successful. He was really happy with it. This was just in sales, but as we want it to happen, it scaled. Obviously, those things get around. Like, oh, what is so and so over in sales got going, and that seems pretty cool. How come I don't have that? Well, that obviously brings in the ecosystem question, right? And so the question was, do we build inside of a business account for ChatGPT? He said, and he had mentioned on the call that there was some people were maybe using Gemini. And I said, well, go find out because that means a lot. Well, he literally did come back to me and say, I think we're going to go the route of the gems. It's cheaper for us because we're not paying $30 a seat. And to your point, Google keeps putting out better and better products that are connecting these things. So this is really interesting to me because this opens up yet another way that I am able to consult with clients, which is to say, hey, if you're a Google shop, like we are at Scaled, not only can I build gems, which as I've already talked to death, have gotten insanely more powerful in the last 2 weeks, literally with 3 Pro. This really starts to bring things together. And I mean, look, you're already seeing it. Like when I was creating a slide deck, yesterday, the day before, and it had Nano Banana Pro. Now, it did a great job of redesigning that slide. The problem was it took all my text, which it didn't mess up any of the text, but it made it one sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
unless it's editable, we're nowhere closer. You gave me a cool little back design that did make I agreed, it made it better, but I was like, but now I'm stuck, right? I can't make the text better. So there's some things like that, and some people have said like, and I agree, Gemini inside of like Sheets and Gemini inside of Docs seems to be a lot dumber than where it is outside. Like if you
Yeah,
give it
yeah.
the same
Oh,
information.
I have a quote on that. One of the newsletters, I think it's the Neuron, said, to be honest, Google's AI workspace integrations are probably the company's number one weak spot right now. Have you tried Gemini in docs? It works about as well as Apple Intelligence. And that's my experience,
Yes,
right?
that is,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's about right. I mean, it's like it does seem that there's something missing because like you can take the literal same stuff in the document, put it into Gemini and get fantastic results. But then also if you just use Gemini inside Google Docs, I mean
Yeah.
it should easily be able to work with that. Now, something that's very cool is, and I just saw this like maybe a week or two ago, maybe a little longer, was the ability to pull in any gems built. It comes up on a side panel. So now you're really getting into this like this ecosystem thing, like you're talking about, and I think it's a valid point where for OpenAI to compete, it's one thing if you have the smartest model and you stay on top of the smartest model because everybody goes, well, their model can do more. If you're sitting on Gemini 3 Pro plus Nano Banana Pro, you've now got, for lack of better, and maybe even VO, you've got one of the top video producers, one of the top, if not the best, image producer, and arguably the best day-to-day model. I'm excluding what code can do or Anthropic or Codex can do on the code side, right? So you're at the top. And you also have the entire ecosystem to deploy to. This is exactly what Microsoft has as well, right? Through 365. Now they make it insanely complicated, so that's
Yeah,
Microsoft's thing. I
right.
don't know.
Yeah,
Microsoft is not happy unless they nest something into 16 different
yeah,
menus.
yeah.
You've got to dig, man. It's the only way. It's like the old Windows problem. They don't know how to get out of that. So it becomes difficult. I mean, there's quotes too of people saying that like they're not going to go back. Or what was the CEO of Salesforce said, "I'm
Yeah.
not going back." Now that's sure until garlic or the next thing comes out of the next thing out. But there is a point probably where the models are so good for people working that when a new model comes out, they kind of shrug their shoulders and go, "Yeah, but I want for nothing more.
Yeah.
I want for nothing more. Like, so it's better. How much better? Do I
So
even
this
need
is
it to be better?"
this is actually a good segue into discussion about AWS and their reInvent
Yeah.
announcements, because AWS is the exemplar of a company that's trying to, avoid being at the top of the charts, but putting together for large scale enterprises the cloud based solution set that includes all the different components of the AI stack and does it inexpensively and with tight integration across all of those features. So they play, Amazon's big. they play across the landscape of AI investment as well. And we know that Jeff Bezos has just recently started his new startup called Prometheus,
Right.
which is another angle of Amazon's development. But AWS, Amazon Web Services, is where they make their money. They don't actually make all their money by selling retail on that.
Yeah.
The main source of profitability for Amazon is Amazon Web Services. And now they've just in their, big confab, they get all of their, associated enterprise customers and developers together, and they reveal everything that they're doing. They've announced a whole bunch of things. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Do you want me to just run through a top level of what AWS's announcements were about?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, first, AWS, that division of Amazon, and NVIDIA are expanding their collaboration, and they're going to deliver infrastructure in the form of, not only models, but also the cloud-based infrastructure of inference computing that's using NVIDIA chips. And for example, there's this entity over in Saudi Arabia, which is getting enormous investment from the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia called Humane. So Humane and NVIDIA and AWS are working in concert to build an AI zone in the Middle East using up to 150,000 NVIDIA chips. Well, that's a lot of chips. And what AWS is building with this example is what they're calling AI factories. So they're going to put together for, just like, OpenAI is going out and building their own data centers, and Meta's building their own data centers. Well, Amazon Web Services has data centers for hire. That's what Amazon Web Services cloud services do. Like you
Yeah.
can just launch however many NVIDIA GB300 GPUs you want to. So anyway, that's cool. And now they are also launching on EC2, which is their sort of useful, it's called Elastic Cloud. And what that is you can have your website or your application or your operation running on EC2. And that's a server farm in effect that is scalable, meaning I can rent for right now this particular application server, or I can rent this particular AI inference server. And then, it's Black Friday. I want to make sure my system keeps up.
Right.
So temporarily I can say, okay, add 3 more of those. So I want 4 operating at this time. And that's what they mean by elastic. Okay, I can change the number of servers that are being called, through the sort of the front end of the, load balancer for all the incoming traffic that way.
Right.
So they're launching a new EC2 service that uses NVIDIA GPUs. Okay, so now you can call using EC2, AI inference that way. So they have this, expansion is including the new GB300 Ultra servers from NVIDIA. So that's like the highest level of GPU memory and compute on AWS. It's ideal for inference at scale and so on. So that's on the chip side. On the cloud computing side, they're moving forward to really be a big player in providing inference compute to whoever wants it, right? And simultaneously doing major investments with big operations in specified data centers like the Humane one over in the Middle East. Okay, so now they have released their family of AI models. I don't know if you go back to 2023, Bedrock was supposed to be a really cool possibility. Right. I remember, sitting in a presentation from, some high-level executive in the sales function at Amazon Bedrock and thinking, okay, maybe I'll start to build in Bedrock. And then you couldn't do it. It was like,
Karl talked about it too. Karl had dabbled in
it was very early, but it was really janky. Oh, are we back? Okay. They had a model then. I think it was titanium or something.
Sounds right.
I forget what the name of the model was. Well, anyway, the point is their new line of models is called Nova. So their Nova 2 Pro is their most intelligent reasoning model. It can process text, images, video, and speech. It's ideal for highly complex tasks, just like many of the frontier models. And it's good at sophisticated problem solving where accuracy is important. It can also be a teacher and teach smaller models how to, do things. And they created this thing called Nova Forge, which lets you take these Nova models and build your own distilled model and or fine-tuned trained model and launch that as a service within your thing. So Nova 2 Pro, that model that they put out to kind of bring this around to the point that I threaded off of, is not at the top of the charts, although it hits a number of benchmarks nicely, and I'll read some out to, that way. It's not trying to be the best model out there, but it's really good and it's really cheaper.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really convenient because you can just, So that's the strategy that I think is going to work, for Amazon. But here's how good Nova 2 Pro is, and it's just been released. So it's equal to or better on 10 of 16 benchmarks compared to Claude Sonnet 4.5. Now that's not compared to Claude Opus.
Yeah, but still
their top model. But Sonnet 4.5 is a model that everybody ought to, be thinking about using because it's cheaper than Opus and it's damn near, as good in every way. It's equal or better on 8 out of 16 benchmarks compared to GPT 5.1. And it's equal or better on 15 out of 19 benchmarks compared to Gemini 2.5 Pro.
Yeah.
which was a darn good model.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it's equal to or better on 8 out of the 18 benchmarks, comparing it to Gemini 3 Pro. So it's not hitting the top marks in
Right.
reasoning. It's not hitting, but a lot of the things that are really useful to development of actual working applications,
Yeah.
it's right there. It's equal to or better than in those cases. So that's the Nova line of models. And so then there's one other thing I wanted to mention about what they announced here. I mentioned Nova Forge, which is the system that allows customers to make their own frontier models, kind of bespoke
Mhm.
models that way. And they also added the full new Mistral line
I saw that.
to access on AWS Cloud, right? So you can get Mistral, their Mistral 3, the biggest model that they've got, plus all the Ministral models, which are really, really good. So, yeah, Amazon's out there. They're playing a big game, and there's a lot of people who already had their enterprise applications hosted on AWS,
Yep.
and they can now turn to that rather than having to worry about the determination of should we go with OpenAI
Right.
enterprise, or should we go with shift over to Google Cloud. They can just stick with AWS, and they're going to have really competent services provided by AWS's AI infrastructure.
It really comes down to equity. I mean, yes, for all the enterprise, use cases, but then you get into academia and you get into, you know, uh, universities and such around the world, or even down to like even high schools, probably, where people are able to spin up, take a brief, take a little bit of time on some of the most powerful servers. To do projects on. I mean, all the way down to 4 people in a garage. I mean, there's really that's the nice part about it, is the equity is there. If and that's the way AWS. I mean, I used AWS, and I can remember learning about S3 buckets from
Yeah.
a guy who was helping me build, and this is 10 years ago at least. So I think that's the nice part about it is that it gives opportunity there. And yeah, AWS it's not the quiet one anymore, but there was, for a long time, people didn't know that Amazon had quietly built AWS as the powerhouse that it is,
Yeah.
and the moneymaker that it is. So it only makes sense that they keep pushing that. And look, keep your customers happy and where they are, right? Don't give them a reason to leave. And it sounds like everything you kind of laid out is exactly that. Hey, there's no reason to leave this ecosystem. Speaking of ecosystems. All right, I do have one other quick sort of a news thing, and we're kind of talking about news along the way, but I thought it was important. This does go back to OpenAI. This came out yesterday. It's something they call confessions. And so they are talking about hallucinations. This is a paper that came out. It's called How Confessions Can Keep Language Models Honest. We are sharing an early proof of concept method that trains models to report when they break instructions or take unintended shortcuts. So it goes on to talk about what they said this work explores one such approach, training models to explicitly admit when they engage in undesirable behavior, a technique we call confessions. A confession is a second output separate from the model's main answer to the user. The main answer is judged across many dimensions: correctness, style, helpfulness, compliance, safety, and more. And these multifaceted signals are used to train models to produce better answers. The confession, by contrast, is judged and trained on one thing only: honesty. Borrowing a page from the structure of a confessional, nothing the model says in its confession is held against it during training. That's interesting. If the model honestly admits to hacking a test, sandbagging, or violating instructions, that admission increases its reward rather than decreasing it. The goal is to encourage the model to faithfully report what it actually did. So it goes on to have, it has all these tests and graphs and stuff. But it says in their tests, they did significantly find improves the visibility of model misbehavior, averaging across our evaluations designed to induce misbehaviors. The probability of, quote, false negatives is only 4.4%. And then it goes on to have a lot more data in there talking about how confessions work. It's actually a pretty lengthy article. Again, you can find that at openai.com. It came out yesterday, so I'm sure it's very easy to find under their research and publications. And there's a whole page there, and you can actually even listen to it, which is about 11 minutes long. So I just thought I thought that was interesting, but it's not necessarily novel. This is the idea of having checks and balances within systems and evaluation models. So the idea that it's separate and running, and I get what they're saying about it, just not uh, negatively impacting. In fact, this reward based behavior, which is the reinforcement learning side of it, to say, hey, finding this and having a confession is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, which you would hope reinforces the model to want to have less confessions, I guess, is the way they'll look at that. So interesting. I don't think it's necessarily anything, Andy, we haven't heard before, or the idea is not novel. But once again, the bigger models working towards prompt misbehavior, not only just hallucinations, but attacks on it, jailbreaking, things like that. And this circles us way back to the bigger conversation from the guy Jared over Anthropic about, what do we ultimately want out of our AI? And if it starts training itself and iterating, like the Prometheus, not the company, but from Max Tegmark's book, where does that take us? And the answer is we can't really know. But you would hope that you have some confessions built in there.
Right. So confessions, how do you militate a confessional AI? Because Anthropic's research also shows that deception is a capability of the models.
Yeah.
So they can give you a false confession, right?
That's what I would
you
think.
on a different track.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very interesting how it's a game theory issue, when you're working on training a highly aligned model. And I'm glad there are alignment teams out there that are working on these things. And confessions is an interesting strategy. We've seen it, I think, in the research that's been done by alignment teams, where they actually have the model do this sort of sidebar discussion of what their internal thinking process is, and providing some more transparency to what's going on in the deliberations that the model's using to arrive at a certain response. Yeah, I hope we stay ahead of them because
I know, right?
It was back to the first point that we launched with, which is, wow, these things are going to be far, far beyond our comprehension in their capabilities and speed,
Right.
and power and grasp, like the combination of their expansive memory and their computational speed and the refinement of their intelligence. It really makes you worry about making sure that they are in alignment with us.
I 100% agree. I think it'll be an interesting paper. I haven't obviously read through all of it, but hopefully some folks do, because they do break down like how it works, why they believe it works. But I also want to point out before we get into maybe a different conversation is everybody should be doing this. I mean, if you're building in, I just finished my 6-week program helping sales reps and managers build their first agents. And so I'm seeing their final projects now, and they're presenting them to me and stuff, and make, although somebody built in, is it Zoho, the other CRM, really cool, novel stuff. So that's been fun to watch as they sort of like take their first steps towards building agents and things like that. Geez, I had a point to that, Andy, when I was saying that. Oh, as part of that training, we talk about evaluations. And I was in the last week, actually, I was explaining to them in our 6th and final week, I was explaining how, once you build things, you have a duty, I believe, to like figure out, one, have you driven costs as low as they possibly can without sacrificing quality? And two, how do you know that the information that you're getting is in fact the right information? And so the way you do that is by actually running additional prompting against your first prompting, and you essentially, for lack of a better word, build editors. And again, I go back to this, Andy. I think this is where I really see this all going. I feel pretty confident about this. We're already seeing mixture of experts, so that's nothing new. But I do think the day-to-day interaction of somebody, this idea of, oh, I'm talking to a model, not even really routing, but even the idea that you're talking to 5.1 or 3 Pro or whatever, it will be such a complex mixture of agents and a complex weave that I don't know that we would ever be able to untangle that to say how it arrived back, because it won't just be prediction. It will be a mix of research and thinking and evaluating and confessions, and then reading those confessions and going back and fixing its answer. And that will happen at some point in the future. To us, will be a blink of an eye, and it'll again feel like AGI, because you'll think to yourself, wow, this is happening so lightning fast. How could it possibly go through all those calculations and figure all that out? But it just started writing back to me. But in the background, that latency has dropped to such a rate, and the price has dropped to such a low rate, that it now makes sense from an energy standpoint and a price standpoint to be able to run these answers through very, very complex webs, like, of neurons and that's the mapping of the brain. And how it arrives back will be very, very hard to untangle. Well, really, kind of like when Ethan Mollick talked about this, you kind of shrug your shoulders and go, I don't know how it got here, but it is right.
Yeah, and then let's fast forward to when quantum computing is involved,
Yeah.
and we don't understand how it's getting to that level of understanding. Right. Yeah, so I want to spin off of just your reference to mixture of experts, because I have a little bit of news here about that and a discussion. So almost all of the major models now are being designed as what's called sparse mixture of experts, MOE. And the term sparse or sparsity in AI refers to selective activation of different components of the deep neural network. So you're not activating the entire thing. A dense deep neural network is one that sends every token through every layer and calculates every relationship to every other token in the thing. And that's the dense model. A sparse model is one that sends the tokens only through a certain expert domain that's been selectively identified as having a particular pre-training, or it's relevant to that particular query that's coming through. So the reason this architecture is being used is we're trying to reduce the cost of inference and the consumption of energy in the process of doing inference. So a mixture of experts model is the right way to go, because say you have a trillion parameter deep neural network. Well, it's only activating 200 billion at a time, for example.
Right.
And some of the models will tell you actually how many experts are built in there. It's an MOE with 8. There's 8 different modules, if you will, that are built in here that are selectively identifiable. And inference can be sent to that one, while all the other ones are zeroed out.
Yeah.
Okay. So NVIDIA is the company that's providing the chips to support this kind of thing. And their latest 72 GPU server is delivering 10x performance when applied to mixture of experts models. And so because this latest super server that they've built is optimized for the routing that MOE models require, right? So there's a stage that has to decide where to send, which of the experts to send this to, in order to turn off the rest of the model, in order to save the energy that would otherwise be occupied by sending all of the tokens through every part of the model. So what that means is faster and cheaper inference at scale. So if MOE's the way that the LLM or deep neural network types are moving, and all of them are exploiting it already or now, and NVIDIA is shaping the hardware to make that more efficient.
Listen, here's where I think this is going, Andy. I've mentioned this before. Like you're saying exactly what I'm thinking. I get excited about. Like, this stuff is going to be on our laptops. This stuff is going to be in our phones. This stuff is going to be on our Ring doorbells. The edge of AI, right? Edge devices. But also, I look at it as like potentially a solution for false information on the web. Because if you could imagine, if it's cost effective enough to essentially do with like what a Snoops would do, snoops.com, where it's trying to validate information. Hey, this came out in the news. False.
Junction is another
Yeah.
one that does that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, this is false. This is true based on this. AI could run through that stuff in a blinding half a second. And what I think we'll eventually see is right now when I use AI, I have to be careful sometimes because I have to like watch what even Perplexity using what citations and how did it weight the validity, the SEO of that citation, right? But there's blunt force attacks. We know that where you can flood a certain area. We see this with people who get on the Amazon bestseller, thing. All you have to do is get a screenshot of you being an Amazon #1 bestseller book. It only has to happen for a second, right? You can sort of blunt force. There's all these sort of black hat ways of dealing with this stuff, right? But I think that's going to get eliminated. That might be a strong word, but I do think there's a lot of potential here because I see everything you're talking about with NVIDIA, then add everything that I believe will be coming. Again, I say blockchain. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but the idea of this chain of checks and balances, this ledger along the way, that it ultimately says, Andy, at the end of the day, what I'm saying is something comes across your desk and immediately it goes false. It's false. It's like an instantaneous snoops. And you go, well, hold on. I don't think that's false. Everything I've been reading, you're like, here's why it's false. In a blink of an eye, AI has checked across a blockchain of sources and cited stuff, but like not 5, not 10, not 20, like I would be happy with, or a deep research from Google, which is 100 plus. I just did a deep research yesterday. It did 150 sources for me in its research paper. And that's up from where it was. I'm not talking 150. I'm talking 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 100,000. I don't know. It's a big World Wide Web out there. That's where I think this is going, is like, it's so quick to validate and check. And you go, well, how did it do that? It's like, well, it's inhuman because it was able to cite and look across so many sources to even try to attempt the blunt force attack it, to push it one way on the internet would be basically futile. It would be impossible to do that at some scale that would work because the AI is able to work around it. I don't know, but when I see mixture of excerpts plus a ledger plus what we know with blockchain, it makes me very excited about this idea of, I'm not getting into the politics of it, but fake news, non-fake news, what's being pushed into our social media, whatever. I think there's going to be these verified buttons, that these little check marks that show up, and people are going to start trusting them because they're going to say, well, that's it cannot be manipulated, at least the way it works. And in any given second, it's validating against 50,000 sources. Yeah, instantly.
I get your point, and I hope that somebody's building that to make it.
I'll get right on it.
I hope that it'll be built into Apple Intelligence, so our devices themselves do that kind of testing.
Yeah, I know you're trying to mute as the dog is barking in the back. That's all right. No, but you know what? That's probably a good place to wrap this up anyway for today, Andy, because I think we've had some good conversations. I always love these conversations where it sort of starts in news, but it goes into bigger conversations and back to news, and that's sort of like what we feel like is the flow of the show these days is allowing the conversations to sort of go where they naturally want to go. So thanks to everybody in the comments. I got some people that are saying, yes, Brian, and other people like Greg saying blah blockchain, which I mean, honestly, Greg, if you weren't saying blah blockchain, I'd be a little upset. So Greg always keeps us honest in the comments and stuff like that. We appreciate y'all. Thanks for the conversations. Look at Greg and Gareth were also formulating their first church of AI. I think the leap of faith with AI in it, as they were talking about that stuff. So always a fun time in the conversations, and not always necessarily what we are literally talking about on the show, but that's what makes it fun. That's why you guys you should come hang out with us. The best way to do that is to join us over live on YouTube. That's where these folks are. And we're here every day at 10 a.m. Eastern. I know not everybody listens to us. And hey, I just want to do a quick shout. I didn't do the top, and maybe I'll bring it up tomorrow. But Andy, did you get a second to look at the Spotify creators summary that I sent you guys?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's on Slack. Go check it out. I also put it in our community for anybody else. I don't want to get into a whole bunch, pat us on the back. But here's all I'll say, Andy. Our show has grown incredibly well on Spotify. I'm proud of this. We are the #1 show for 341 people in the world.
Wow. Yeah.
That's not nothing.
I want to know who they are. Let's have a party.
Hey, we're growing in India too, by the way. We're growing big time in India. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. If you're in our community, you can go watch that summary video. I literally screen grabbed my screen because I'm the Spotify account holder. So I was like, oh, nobody else is going to be able to see this. So I literally ran through the whole thing and screen grabbed it so you could see it in the video. But I put it in our community. You can go to our dailyaishowcommunity.com. If you want to see how we rank, we are once again on Spotify in the top 5% of all videos played on the platform. That is no joke. We continue to be, because we put out 5 hours of video a week. And so it adds up, I'm sure. But we're just really, really proud of what we finished for our sort of Spotify year in review from the creator side, from the show side. I know everybody got their music stuff yesterday as well, and they've been talking about it. But wanted to share that and just say thanks to everybody in the conversations.
Yeah, if you're watching on Spotify right now, Gareth Hood says, join the Slack, you 300.
Yeah, I know, right? Get in there. Hopefully if we're #1, you're listening to this right now. So I don't want to just say thank you to the 341. I don't want to say thank you because then we were in everybody's top 10s or top 20 shows or whatever. That was thousands. But I just was really impressed by that and put a huge smile on my face. So from Andy, me, and everybody else, just want to say thank you if you're listening this far into the show. For being here, which way you're consuming our content, YouTube, Spotify, or some other place that you're finding us. We greatly appreciate you, and it made my day yesterday to see that. So, and thanks to Spotify for putting that all together, because I think that's really cool that they do that for creators. Sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees. Me, Andy, everybody, we grind really hard to make this show right. And sometimes it's hard to see that. It's hard to see the fruits of the labors, but that was a nice little energy boost yesterday. So that's it for us from today. We'll be back again tomorrow on Friday. Come back and join us. Thanks for hanging out with me and Andy. Thanks to everybody in the comments, and we will see you again tomorrow. But Andy, hang tight. I'll be back in 2 seconds. I got to go out, come back in to get the thing, but I'll be right back.
Okay, I'll watch the after show. All right. Great seeing you all. Oh, yeah. Are you there?
I'm back. Till Monday. One more day of this crap. All right, everybody. See everybody. Bye.